Welcome to Why Virginia 2017 Matters and why you should join the fight to flip it blue. Our goals with this presentation are to, first, spread the word about how Virginia's 2017 state races impact the national political landscape. Second, work to build a nationwide network of informed donors. This will not only help flip Virginia blue this year, it will assist with reclaiming other state legislatures in upcoming years. And third, we want to replicate two proven models that have already been successful in raising funds for state races. To give you an idea of where we're headed in this presentation, we have a roadmap. We'll address these questions. Where are we? How did we get here? Why is this a problem for all of us, red states, blue states, and purple states alike? And how do we dig out? So where as Democrats are we? In short, we're in a very bad place. Looking at this chart, you can see that the Republicans control everything at this point. The presidency, the Senate, the House of Representatives, the Supreme Court, and 2/3 of state legislatures. We've also lost an astounding 1,000 state legislative seats in the past 8 years. To put this in perspective, no two-term president post-World War II has overseen a collapse of as many seats as occurred under Obama. Well, how did we get here? It's important to note that what you just saw did not occur in a vacuum. The 2009 Republicans found themselves exactly where we are now, swept at all three levels of the federal government, the presidency, Senate, and House. But they were smart. They saw the 2010 census on the horizon and knew that whoever controlled state legislatures in 2010 would draw the new state district maps. They shrewdly shifted focus with the goal of remaking the map at the state level. In short, they showed up, rolled up their sleeves, and focused on the long term. And they implemented 3 steps to accomplish their game plan: an unprecedented financial investment, an extremist agenda, and entrenched control. So, step 1 of this process was a massive investment in state races by conservatives and their billionaire donors, like the Koch brothers and the DeVos family. Using their super PACs and the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United, these folks funneled millions of dollars into state races at a rate Democrats could not compete with. By 2017, their investment had paid off spectacularly. Half of all states were Republican trifectas, which means they hold the governorship and control of both legislative chambers. Republicans went from 14 to 25 trifectas in that 8-year span. By contrast, Democrats have only 6 trifectas. And just this summer, Republicans notched a 26th trifecta when West Virginia's governor changed his affiliation from Democratic to Republican. So step 1 was achievement of these trifectas. Step 2 is to push an extremist agenda centered around restricting women's health care rights, discriminating against the LGBTQ and immigrant communities, rolling back environmental protections, and doing the gun lobby's bidding. Now, Republicans are not satisfied with simply winning trifectas and passing their extremist agenda. Their next step is to cement their control by wielding the tools of the trifecta that make their stranglehold at the state level a self-fulfilling prophecy. What are these tools? Gerrymandering, which they use to carve out favorable district lines for themselves; voter ID and voter registration laws, which they use to erect barriers to voting for groups who traditionally vote for Democrats; and the misnomer right-to-work laws, which are designed to bust unions, a traditional voter turnout mechanism for Democrats. Republicans manipulate boundaries to give themselves a majority in many districts and concentrate the voting strength of Democrats into as few districts as possible. This turns democracy on its head, as politicians are choosing their voters rather than voters choosing their leaders. As for voter suppression, take a look at the states that had already used their trifectas to impose first-time voting restrictions in time for the 2016 presidential election. Encouraged by how successfully these voter restrictions worked for them in 2016, you can see Republicans are running with this strategy in 2017 as new bills to restrict access have spread like wildfire. So we've seen where we are and how we got here. The next question is, why should you, as an out-of-state person, care? The answer is the ripple effect. The fallout from the conservative extremist takeover is not confined within the state's borders, but rather it extends even to those in safe blue states. In fact, there are several reasons non-Virginians have a stake in what happens in Virginia. Reason number 1 relates to the very real possibility of a constitutional convention. Under Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution, states can convene a constitutional convention if 2/3, or 34, of their legislatures pass a resolution in favor of doing so. A couple of things to keep in mind here. They only need control of 34 state legislatures to pull this off. It does not require a governor's signature. Also, just a little history reminder. The last constitutional convention we had in this country, that would be 1787, when our Constitution was adopted. The bottom line is that entrenchment at the state level is not enough for these guys. They're now working to parlay that state control into control of the federal government. As one conservative outlet noted, the Constitutional Convention is to be a, quote, long-term firewall in the states for when Democrats win back control of the federal government. Here you can see some non-fake news sites covering conservative extremists' furious work to get a constitutional convention. Anyone who thinks the same crew who engineered the state-level takeover we just examined aren't going to use the same blitzkrieg tactics to obtain a constitutional convention just isn't paying attention. So, why should you care what happens if you're out of state? Well, 28 resolutions calling for such a constitutional convention have been passed. As I mentioned earlier, Republicans control 33 state legislatures, which puts them only one state away from the power to call a convention to literally rewrite our federal constitution and your rights. If we can flip Virginia blue, we fortify the firewall against a constitutional convention and would move Republicans 2 states away from such a goal. Lest you think the Republicans are not deadly serious about this, consider. In September of 2016, they gathered in Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia, yep, Virginia again, and held a simulated constitutional convention. They practiced procedures and debated and passed 6 amendments. What might these conservative extremists propose at a constitutional convention? Well, in general, they push a generic call for, quote, restricting federal power, a blank check that would open up a Pandora's box of possibilities. At their simulated convention, they passed things like eliminating the federal income tax and granting states the ability to vote to repeal federal laws and regulations. And just this past July, at a Koch brothers event attended by Betsy DeVos, they pitched a repeal of the 17th Amendment, which is the provision that allows you and I to vote for our United States senators. This crew wants to roll back the 17th Amendment and return to 1913, when state legislatures, instead of voters, chose U.S. senators. This is nothing more than a blatant bid to hijack 10 to 17 Democratic Senate seats that are located in states controlled by Republican legislatures. Reason number 2, you should care what happens in other states. These state legislators don't just jerry-rig their own districts, they also draw federal districts for the U.S. Congress. Just look at Virginia. We currently have 7 Republicans and 4 Democrats in our U.S. House of Representatives delegation. However, if those districts were drawn fairly, we'd have 1 to 2 more Democrats representing Virginia in Congress. The sketchiness of this Republican domination in U.S. Congress is exposed when you consider that every statewide office we have in Virginia is currently held by a Democrat. Both of our U.S. senators, our governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, they're all Democrats. In other words, as long as Republicans have no power to draw the borders, as the case is with statewide races, Democrats win. By rigging districts for the U.S. Congress, Virginia's state legislators dilute the national power of Democrats. Now, you may be thinking, 1 seat, what's the big deal? Well, here's the big deal. When you examine these gerrymandering shenanigans nationwide, the seats start to accumulate. The Brennan Center for Justice estimates that Republicans have created a 17-seat cushion advantage for themselves via the worst gerrymandering abuses in just a few battleground states. This leads to reason number 3 why you should care. Because seats equal votes, which greatly impacts the national legislation and agenda. With just 3 more votes in the House of Representatives, Democrats could have killed Trumpcare in the House. With the 17 gerrymandered states in Democratic control, Democrats would only need 7 states to regain control of the House of Representatives next year, which would mean Democrats would control bringing articles of impeachment, they'd have chairs of key committees like Intelligence and Oversight, and they would control appropriations. The bottom line is that we need to tackle gerrymandering at the state level for national impact. Reason number 4 you should care about these Republicans' state use of trifecta tools? The Republicans' use of trifecta tools of voter ID laws and voter registration laws results in voter suppression, which has national consequences. Wisconsin provides a great example. In Wisconsin in 2016, a new voter ID requirement was in place for the first time in a presidential election. It is estimated that 300,000 eligible voters lacked the ID they needed to vote. Trump won by only 22,000 votes and took all 10 electoral votes. As you can see, Wisconsin's voter ID law should be credited with an assist here. Thus, the shenanigans Republican extremists are up to in states affects the ability of a Democrat like Hillary Clinton to secure the electoral votes needed to win a presidential election. This hurts Democrats everywhere. So now that we've seen where we are, how we got here, and why you should care, it's time to turn to the critical question. How do we start digging out? Well, we take a page out of the Republicans' book, we roll up our sleeves, and we get to work at the state level. Because, first things first, protecting our federal rights and rebuilding Congress begins from the bottom up in the states. And the big dig starts in Virginia in 2017. Virginia is the only state in 2017 with more than 100 state seats up for grabs and the real chance to flip its House of Delegates from red to blue. Some quick math. Republicans currently hold 66 of those 100 House of Delegate seats, but Hillary won 51 of the 100 districts in 2016. We have a 3-point strategy for flipping Virginia blue. First, we play the numbers. Second, we get out the vote. It's very simple. We vote, we win. Third, we engage out-of-state progressives like you to help. Number 1, we play the numbers. We have a magic number in Virginia. This year, the numbers are aligning, and we have a unique opportunity to make a big impact. That magic number is 17. Virginia goes to the polls in 2017. Hillary won 17 House of Delegate districts in which a Republican currently sits, and we need exactly 17 seats to flip the chamber blue. So how do we make the numbers work for us? We prioritize those 17 key flippable districts that Hillary won, plus a few she came close to winning. We capitalize on the fact that these House of Delegate races are won and lost by incredibly small margins. In fact, one House of Delegates race was decided by a single vote. This means that your help will have a bigger impact. Contrast this with the John Ossoff congressional race in Georgia that received so much national attention. That race was decided by 10,000 votes. Ours could be determined by single-digit numbers. Your targeted help could make the difference in an election that will likely be decided by a very small margin. The second part of our Flip Virginia Blue strategy is to get out the vote because the numbers are clear. When we vote, we win. Off-year elections are notorious for low voter turnout and thus represent an organizing opportunity. As you can see from this pie chart, while 73% of Virginia active voters voted in the 2016 presidential election, only 27% of those voters come out in an off-year election. Those who vote in presidential elections, but not non-presidential elections, are called drop-off voters. A key part of the strategy then is to engage these drop-off voters and get them to vote this year. We started to ask, who are these voters who vote in presidential elections but stay home for off-year elections? We took a look in one of Virginia's districts, and it demonstrated how boosting voter turnout can help elect Democrats in 2017. Specifically, there were about 9,500 Democratic drop-off voters between 2015 and 2016, in comparison to only 5,500 Republican drop-off voters. That means about 4,000 more Democrats sat out the off-year elections than Republicans. Remember how close these House of Delegate elections can be? Single-digit vote margins. Hillary's victory in 51 districts makes clear we have the numbers to win. Our work will be focused on the critical mission of ensuring our voters are aware of the election and get to the polls. We vote, we win. The third prong of our strategy involves you. We need out-of-state support to help balance the dark money flooding into Virginia from the Koch brothers and their cronies. We have two great models of success here. The first is the Stephanie Hansen Delaware model. Thanks to an outpouring of support from all 50 states and Flippable raising 1/3 of her budget, Hansen saw a clear spike in voter turnout that cemented her win in the Delaware state special election in February, the first swing election in the nation after Trump's inauguration. The second is an amazing group called NY4VA, which simply by holding house parties in New York has already raised over $50,000 for our Virginia House of Delegates candidates. We need to spread this model nationwide, and you can help make that happen. Let's channel our national frustration into organizing and dollars for state races that can help us dig out of the hole Democrats are in. Need further proof to demonstrate that Virginia is worth your time and money? Take a look at this momentum. Keep in mind that Virginia was the one purple state that delivered and went blue for Hillary. In our primary held this June, 170,000 more Democrats than Republicans showed up to vote. In fact, we broke our primary record by around 220,000 votes. As our candidate for governor likes to say, it's game on in Virginia. This brings us back to you. All eyes are on Virginia's elections this year, especially the Republicans and their dark money suppliers. The Koch brothers have already sunk $250,000 into our governor's race, and they're just getting started. Betsy DeVos and her family have already dumped another $100,000 into Virginia's elections this year. If we're going to counter this, we need all hands on deck. Getting out the vote. The key to our winning strategy requires two critical resources: boots on the ground and money to fund that effort. Any money you raise helps buy ads, literature to leave when we knock doors, and yard signs. Just as importantly, it frees up our candidates and local campaign volunteers to spend more time talking to voters because they can spend less time fundraising. In short, the money raised at your fundraising party could make the difference in turning out the votes that could swing an election. Now for the fun part. We have inspiring candidates running for delegate in Virginia. When people say Democrats have no message and are simply anti-Trump, tell them to take a look at Virginia. We have a slate of candidates who are authentic and determined, passionate women and men who have firsthand experience with the state and local issues that affect people's day-to-day lives. The good news is they are fresh candidates who are new to politics. The downside? They are new to political fundraising and all that goes with it. Our candidates need support. It takes about $500,000 to $1 million to run an effective campaign in Northern Virginia and about $100,000 to $200,000 to run outside Northern Virginia. So here's a look at the current Republican delegates sitting in these flippable districts. And here's the slate of our Democratic challengers who are ready to replace them and fight for everyday Virginians. When you look further on our website, www.yvamatters2017.com, you will find fantastic information on these candidates and videos that will bring their authenticity and passion to life. Here's a look at our top 5 flippable districts. To recap, we've got work to do. Virginia is the perfect place to start. We've got the number of voters needed to win, and the way to get those voters to the polls is through two key resources: boots on the ground and dollars to support that singular mission. What can you do to help flip Virginia blue? There are lots of options. Visit us at www.yvamatters2017.com to learn more about the state's candidates and issues, pick a candidate or candidates to support based on their alignment with issues you care about, throw a party. Our host guide toolkit on the website walks you through the steps and provides sample flyers, invitations, and content. Learn about other fundraising opportunities or make a contribution to your favorite candidate. Discover other ways to help like phone banking and postcard writing. And celebrate victory with us on November 8th, 2017.